And welcome to the second segment of our show this morning. We have been joined on the couch by our friends from the Belize National Forensic Service. And this segment, we'll be discussing the first annual Belize Forensic Science Symposium. With us is the Executive Director of the BNFS, Gian. Good morning.
Morning.
We also have Ebony Lyall-Nicholas. She's the Assistant Director of the Forensic Laboratory. Good morning, Ebony. And of course, we have the Assistant Director of the Scenes of Crime, our good friend Ashanti Guzman.
Morning, Sally. Good morning,
Marlene. Good morning. The first forensic, this is something that is pretty much new. What are we expecting and what is this all about?
All right, well, good morning again and thanks for having us. Good morning, Belize, and good morning to all our staff. So the first annual Belize Forensic Science Symposium was an idea that was conceived. We could go as far back as last year when we had a training, small training, that was called the Forensic Pathology Lecture Series. And we saw the need to bring in an expert forensic pathologist from Canada that our department had established some relations with to provide training for our forensic staff, provide training for the medical examiners, for toxicology, for firearms staff, for scenes of crime staff. We also included CIB investigators from the Crimes Investigation Branch. We also included a couple of prosecutors from the Prosecution Branch and the DPP's office, and some justices of the Supreme Court, and I think a couple of magistrates as well. Again, the focus was forensic pathology, some of the best practices in the field, and how to utilize evidence, forensic medical evidence in the court. Then it sparked the idea, like I said, all right, maybe we should do this again next year and try to open up into other areas. And so instead of doing another small training this year, we decided to go more the route of a symposium.
Okay.
We and other staff have been to several of these symposiums in the region, in the U.S., where other countries have their National Forensic Science Service Symposium. Caribbean states are also doing it. A lot of Central American countries are doing it. Ms. Nicholas recently came back from the Mexico Forensic Science Symposium. I think that was their third annual. Right, so for us, we said, all right, this year we'll start our first annual symposium. It will be a combination of training. Let me talk about the objectives a little bit before I get into the agenda. The objectives is to provide training, increase collaboration with our stakeholders, some of those parties I mentioned already, and to raise awareness for tertiary level students on the importance of pursuing studies in forensic science. Right, so the first 2 days, tomorrow and Thursday, are those focus trainings for about 48 or 49 practitioners in the criminal justice system. And on the 27th, Friday, we go to the University of Belize in Bonpan, where along with them, they're a co-sponsor with this event. We're doing some general sessions, awareness sessions for the public, for a wider audience.
And you have some pretty interesting guests coming in as well. Let me backtrack a bit though, and I want to say thank you for being here. I think you are an element of our judicial system that we don't typically get exposed to. You work behind the scenes, and I think the perception of what people think you do may be different from what you actually do. So let's just start off by having us understand how well equipped we are in forensic science and the different departments as well.
All right. Well, I'll start with a summary of the department, and I'll ask the two assistant directors to speak about their respective sections. So the National Forensic Science Service, the NFSS, is a government department under the Ministry of National Security. We work closely with the police, we work closely with the prosecution, with the justice system. It's comprised of 3 units: the medical examiner's office, the forensic laboratory, and the scenes of crime unit. Unfortunately, today I can't have the assistant director in charge of medical examiner's office present to speak about his unit because he has court duties and post-mortem exams to handle. So today we'll focus on the forensic lab and the scenes of crime unit. But I just want to emphasize that we're all civilian staff. Prior to 2013, at some point or the other, each of these units were under the police department. Now it's a separate government department, still working very closely with the police, but we're all staffed by civilians. And so we have
So you're a separate entity. You don't fall under the police department anymore.
We're still under the same ministry. We're sister departments under the same ministry, but separate entity. Total, we have about 60 staff.
60.
Across those 3 units. And I'll ask Ms. Nicholas and Ms. Guzman to talk about their respective units.
So, good morning again. Good morning, Belize. The forensic lab has, how many? 11 technical staff. And by technical staff, I mean people who actually analyze the exhibits that are brought in by police.
Yeah.
We also have an administrative staff who is our support staff. The 3 units that we have at the forensic lab at present are the Serology Unit, the Firearms Unit, and the Chemistry Unit, which is also broken down into subsections of Toxicology and Analytical Chemistry. So to give you a little idea of what we do or what we're capable of, I'll go unit by unit. So the Serology Unit at present, as the name implies, does the analysis of body fluids. So body fluids including blood, semen, saliva. And they do the analysis for identification, and they do all the preparation work for any items to be sent for DNA analysis.
Yeah.
So if they find potential evidence, then they see all what they have for the case, and then they decide whether it's good enough to send for DNA evidence.
Okay.
Or DNA analysis rather. And we use, for DNA analysis, we use accredited labs, or we use approved labs in the region.
Yeah. Do we send out to the Caribbean or to the U.S.?
At present, we're sending to the Caribbean. We have also used the U.S. I think it was Miami.
And the FBI as well.
And exactly, the FBI lab.
So before we get to Ms. Guzman's presentation, I have a question to ask, because I think a lot of Belizeans, for whatever reason, appear to be cynical when we think of forensic evidence or any form of evidence being gathered on a crime scene. Because when we look at what happens in the court, we're asking, well, okay, if persons are able to walk because of a lack of evidence, then how efficient or how effective is the forensic services in the country? How do you respond to that kind of a cynicism, given the importance of the work that you're doing?
Well, the success of whether it's a conviction or an exoneration, because remember, the accused is innocent until proven guilty.
Yeah.
And so for forensic science, for forensic scientists, we should try to be objective. And it's not about trying to get convictions. It's just to produce the evidence, go and tender it in the court, testify if necessary, and have the court decide on whether that evidence either supports or a conviction or an acquittal. No? But there are several other parts of the puzzle. The pure scientific analysis is one. The handling of the evidence is the other. How the evidence was handled from the crime scene through the police, the lab, and back. There are some technicalities in terms of adjournments, delays, whether suspects were handled lawfully or their rights were infringed upon. All of those things can affect the outcome of a case. Yes, there's a lot of a need to develop the services we provide. If you look up there, there's only certain scopes of analysis that we can fairly and reliably say that we are capable of. We don't want to try to take on a bunch of other different types of scientific tests that we're not capable of accurately and reliably and going and testifying that this is the sound evidence that we're providing. So rather than try to take on too much, we're focusing on the areas that we have already, that with our limited staff size, with our limited resources, we can comfortably say that our reports of analysis or reports of crime scene processing or reports on the cause and manner of death are sound. Right? Once we have our system functioning in a way that we're fully satisfied, fully confident in all the outputs, then we can start to take on additional types of evidence, some of which the prosecutors or the defense would want to rely on, but we simply can't do it in country. Like, we want to send more DNA. We want to have more DNA for cases that are required for not only court cases but identifying missing persons. However, there's a cost factor involved.
What's the average cost of sending out a DNA test?
If you go by the rate that the reference lab would give, it varies on the type of sample. Just the pure cost, like a sample of skeletal remain, is usually the more expensive one, like $400 US per analysis. Some of the other analyses, like just the simple swabs, are about 75 or so US dollars per. However, in a case, you can have multiple items. You can have 10, 20 items.
Hair follicles and all these other stuff.
And when we try to outsource, we try to send a batch of them, because at current there's a constraint that one of our analysts has to physically hand deliver the items to a lab and go back and pick them up. Obviously that involves per diem, hotel, airline flight.
Cost,
It's cost from productivity away from their bench in the lab. Right? So but at the moment we try to have a batch of cases, and currently we're about to send a batch of about 10 or 11 cases in a couple of weeks.
Almost like a dozen cases.
The total cost of that is somewhere close to about 15,000 or so US dollars for just one batch. And we try to do this at least 3 or 4 times per year.
Well, thank you for clarifying that, because I really did not know that that's what it entailed. And it explains why oftentimes when we're asking for DNA results, that they don't, we don't get them as quickly as we'd like to expect them.
We, through the symposium as well, we're trying to start these conversations. We would like to reach the point, and this will require a lot of buy-in for our stakeholders to be able to FedEx or DHL out individual samples. If something comes in this week, we FedEx it out a couple of weeks, we get the results back. Rather than batch by batch, we send case by case.
So why can't you FedEx it now?
There's a requirement in the court system that to be able to, and this is the what has been in place for I think the past, since 2012 we've been outsourcing, so I'd say at least 7 years, that to prove the integrity of the evidence or to be able to maintain, we want to see people
the traceability.
that handle it
chain,
and
chain
that
of
are
custody.
capable of testifying. But other jurisdictions, if you do the research, other jurisdictions utilize FedEx or DHL, and their court systems have come to accept it. Some in the Caribbean still require, just as we do, the hand delivery.
Okay.
No, and there are pros and cons for both sides.
Yeah.
Let's get the
clearly.
scenes of crimes.
Well, I would just want to get in one thing here, because I think that when you speak of the perception that people have, everybody has seen a crime show in Belize, right? And I think that clearly
CSI.
it means that we now have an understanding of what at least is the gold standard based on Hollywood, right?
Well,
So I want let me just start off there, right? So what it opens up our own forensic services to is, well, why haven't they done X, and why haven't they done Y, and the crime scene has not been preserved, and we're not seeing all of these things being done. So I want to give you that's very clearly what you know to be your reality. How do you respond to that?
there is something that's actually called the CSI effect, which
Yeah.
is exactly that.
Yeah.
So what happens is you get the idea that in an hour, you can solve all the crime and have all the forensics in the world and everything works together and the police are doing what they need to do, and you know that's the ideal, but that's not reality.
Okay.
Reality is that we have to deal with different breaks in systems, which a part of this symposium and a part of us reaching out to stakeholders and trying to get all of that together. Because remember, forensic science is only one part of the puzzle.
Yeah.
And though we may be providing evidence, there might be breakdowns in other areas. Or it might be that we cannot provide the type of evidence or the type of results that they would like.
Yeah.
Or it might be that we have the results, but the law has not caught up to what, how to use them in court.
Yeah.
For example, people think that we can do DNA overnight. It's really not an overnight thing. You know, there's a lot of work that needs to go into it. There's legislation, there's getting a database together, there's training, there's equipment, and all of this has a cost as well.
Yeah.
So it's things like that that you have to bear in mind. And to further answer your question about lack of evidence, evidence might not necessarily mean forensic evidence. It might mean other evidence that you need to put together to make what you're reporting, you know, like complete.
Yeah.
And to go back to Isani's point of scenes of crime, that's really where everybody says. Now, here's the thing. Because we are the media, we get to see and show to the public, because we're their eyes and ears, the crime scene itself. What it allows the public to see is who's moving through, what they're doing, how many people, and even social media. You know, you see people, the recent body of Adamir Chuck. You saw all these people in that area. Talk to me about your
Marlene,
work.
that could be a good and bad thing
Yeah.
at the same time, especially for the media. But let me talk a little bit about what Scenes of Crime Unit is mandated to do.
Yes.
We're, like Mr. Cho has said, we are an independent department.
Yes.
So we don't work for the police. We work with the police. So the Scenes of Crime Unit is sort of the gatekeepers for forensic evidence and procedure.
Yeah.
So the technicians, there's 31 technicians, various levels. We have basic, we have advanced, and we have senior technicians. All of the technicians are trained to process major crime scenes, which is what the media always portray. There are second responders to crime scenes. So when the technician arrives on the scene must already be secure. Many times the technician will come on the scene and it is not, and contaminated already.
That is true.
Yeah.
And you will
So
see
you're
it in the
not
media.
supposed to cordon off the area. It should be that you arrive and it's already secure.
That's right, and that is the police job. That is not the crime scene technician's job. So many times the crime technician will have to act as a person to say, can you come off the scene? And we'll also have non-participation of the police themselves who will not want to remove themselves from the crime scenes. So by the time the processing starts, you already have contamination. So the evidence is only good as how it's been preserved. But the technician must still process the crime scene, and the processing entails photographing all exhibits, marking, picking up every exhibit off the scene, properly packaging, labeling, sealing, filling out a chain of custody form, and handing over all the exhibits to the police investigating officer or transporting it to the forensic laboratory. We do have exhibits on the scenes that we need to further process for fingerprint, for example, and those have to be returned to the office because it's difficult to do it on the scene. So when those fingerprints are lifted, it's passed on to the police officer who is an expert at fingerprinting. Fingerprinting is analyzed by the police, not by the scenes of crime unit.
So you secure the print, but then you hand it over to the police.
Yes, and they're the one who does the analysis of the fingerprint. Whenever we have major scene involving person have died, whether it be from a murder or sudden death, there's also an autopsy that must be conducted, and the crime scene technician is responsible for attending the autopsy. They're responsible for fingerprinting on unknown persons, foreign nationals, as well as taking their photographs, and taking any samples from the doctor that he feels that need to be analyzed to the forensic laboratory.
I'll say this as a reporter in my capacity. The number of crime scenes that I've witnessed, and the fact that, and this is not an indictment on the police department, but you're perfectly right in saying that there are times when the scene of a crime is totally contaminated because the officers who respond to the incident don't properly cordon off an area, so you have a lot of foot traffic where people come.
Not only that, sometimes the exhibits are picked up by the hands and they're not using gloves. All these things, sometimes they pick it up with a hand, put it back on the scene, and then they want us to process the scene.
Either a weapon or any other item.
So, you know, Ashanti, again, this is such a fruitful conversation for the clarity that you bring to the scenario. And so what I hear, though, is that there is a lot of education that has to be done because it's not just the police. If, God forbid, I walk onto a crime scene, I also need to know what parameters I should have, or that I should perhaps block people out, or have at least the thought of preserving the crime scene itself.
So that goes back to, again, the CSI effect, and we've seen it recently, we've seen it several times where family members, and I mean, we understand it's human nature, they want to try to take justice into their own hands. But when they reach a crime scene, they should not go on the scene, they should wait for the police to come. If there's a person in need of assistance, then yes, render assistance at preserving life.
Save the life first.
Nobody should venture onto a crime scene that's not police or scenes of crime or trained law enforcement. Because that, as Sachin mentioned, that will affect the integrity of the evidence. It will question later on when it reaches court. It might not be admissible because they question the integrity. Right, so again, some of the factors why cases fall out. But yes, there is a need for closer cross-training. We call it with police source and also police. Actually, at the moment, Ms. Ashanti and her team are actively working with the senior CIB staff to put together revised crime scene protocols to help to remove some of these gaps on both ends to try to improve the efficiency and the reliability of processing the scenes.
So what do you do with evidence that you're sure has been contaminated? I mean, you may not have seen people pick up items or move if it's a bloody mattress or something, but you see many people moving around. What do you do with this evidence?
You still have to collect them.
Okay, but how do you account for the fact that it may have been contaminated?
It's
is there
noted.
a note made?
It's noted.
Everything
so
is
a crime scene report on what they collect.
And everything is documented. And what happens is, even because we are cognizant of the situation, you have to give evidence a chance still. Not because you
Okay.
think that it's contaminated, then you will completely disregard that piece of evidence.
So even if there are 5 prints on it, those 5
Well, then
prints
you
are
use
sent
it-
forward.
Yes.
You have the
4 may
process
be
of elimination
police.
as
You
well.
still have to.
Okay.
Let's go back to the idea of the symposium. Is there a public awareness element to it where while we're having this conversation and viewers are being able to learn certain things, in terms of the actual symposium itself, what is the aim in terms of raising sensitivity to the public?
Okay. Well, on the third day is where we target that public awareness aspect of it. So there are sessions. I'll be talking about the Forensics Department in Belize, the past, present, the future. Ms. Nicholas will be talking about an idea called a crime gun intelligence center, because most of our homicides are gun related or gunshot wound inflicted. We have a crime scene technician that will be talking about the challenges of processing crime scenes in coastal areas, because in Belize we have some specific nuances that other countries would not necessarily have in terms of tropical climate, in terms of coastal environments, in terms of marine predation, those things, especially for bodies that come from those islands, the Keys offshore. No? We'll have a panel discussion by 2 forensic pathologists, 2 of our experts that we're bringing in from the USA and from Canada, on the medical legal death investigation systems, the coroner system, which we have in Belize, versus the medical examiner system, which other countries have. We'll have one of those pathologists, his name is Dr. Alfredo Walker. He was the founding president of the Caribbean Association for Forensic Sciences, and he'll be talking about his proposed model for advancing forensic science and medicine in the Caribbean. We'll have a DNA expert from St. Lucia that will be coming in. She'll be talking about the process of establishing a DNA laboratory in St. Lucia, a very small island nation, so we'll use that as some valuable insight into what our country will take when we get to that point to incorporate DNA into our scope. And I believe the University of Belize will be doing a presentation on their launching of a forensic chemistry course. They don't offer a degree program in forensic science, but in their Bachelor's of Chemistry course, not to steal their thunder or anything, but in their Bachelor's of Chemistry course, they have launched this semester here a forensic chemistry course, which one of our staff has helped them in preparing materials and delivering. So it's targeted at the tertiary level community, but we will also have the media there. I hope to see at least one of you guys there. During the symposium, we've been working over the past few months with the government press office to produce some short, about 10-minute or so documentaries on each section, on the lab, on scenes of crime, on the medical examiner's office, that will air during the breaks and during lunch. So you'll get just a generic view from these documentaries, and these will be available on social media afterwards. No? So there's that aspect that it won't just be at the symposium. Afterwards, some of the materials will persist that people can reference. No?
Now, what I hear in terms of your, and I saw it in your panelist list, that you do have a focus on the medical examination and determining cause of death.
Yes.
We have to talk about this process
Sure.
because it is one where even when we receive some of the reported causes of death, they're strange to say the least.
Yeah, there's cause of death and there's manner of death. There's
Okay.
also mechanism of death.
Okay.
The manner of death is like homicide, suicide.
Let me jump in
accident,
here. So the forensic pathologists that we use in Belize, let's start there. Who are our resources?
We have no forensic pathologist in Belize.
What does that mean?
That's working for
Who's
us.
doing the examinations?
The forensic pathologist, that term refers to a specific set of trainings. So we don't have forensic pathologists that require the medical degree plus at least a 4 years anatomic pathology residency plus at least a 1 year forensic medicine fellowship. We don't have somebody in Belize working for us that has that combination of
So
training.
there's no specifically trained forensic pathologist.
We have
in country.
trained forensic medical examiners. You can be a forensic medical examiner without being a forensic pathologist.
So
The gold standard is to have a forensic pathologist. 2 of our guests that are coming are trained forensic pathologists,
Yes.
and board certified forensic pathologists.
Yes.
In Belize, we have 2 forensic medical examiners. One of them is only missing that last 1 year fellowship to become a forensic pathologist. He's an anatomic pathologist. He's the assistant director. and the other is a forensic specialist with over 30 years of experience. Right? You have, in other countries as well, you have medical examiners with varying combinations of these. The gold standard
My question.
is the forensic pathologist.
I didn't want to miss this part though. Gian, can you just, as the head of this agency, can you just identify to me, is this one of our major deficiencies in this country?
Yes.
Why have we not been able to secure a forensic pathologist?
Again,
I'm sure you put in a request, right?
Yeah. Also, and you could probably ask some of the members of the medical community this question.
Yeah.
Why don't we have more medical students or medical professionals that go and specialize in forensic pathology? Right? Because we have a lot
I do
of
have an answer
cardiologists,
to this question,
we have
actually.
neurosurgeons, but in Belize, I haven't met any of them. If you introduce me to them,
No,
I'll
no.
be eternally grateful.
They go to
I haven't
medical
met-
school and they like saving lives more than trying to figure out cause of death.
Let me.
That's
throw
what
this in there. So, is it then? And it's not a blame game per se, because I'm trying to figure out where the media got forensic pathologists from to begin with. Is it that the error is on our end in terms of the nomenclature, or is it that?
Yeah, in your defense, you don't know the proper
differences.
terminology, nomenclatures,
Yes.
technical specifications that goes into these things, right? So,
The thing is, and the thing is, there's nothing wrong with having a medical examiner do it. Like the director said, the forensic pathologist is the gold standard.
Yeah.
But in many other countries, there are very limited forensic pathologists around the world, to be honest. Because the symposium that I went to in Mexico recently explained that there are people doing the job and they're doing the job properly.
Yeah.
However, there's a board or there's a standard or requirements for you to become a forensic pathologist, which several of them have not met and which one of ours will meet quite soon.
Oh, that's good to hear.
So just to give you more context, so we have those two medical examiners. We have a third one that will be coming on board hopefully before the ending of this year. Our medical examiner's office does most of the post-mortem examinations in this country, because you have basically two types. You can reduce the two types of post-mortem exams: clinical, that the Ministry of Health doctors handle, and I think they have 2 or 3 pathologists, and the forensic post-mortems. Last year, just to put it in the context for you, we did 446 post-mortem exams shared between those two doctors. The amount of those cases, those 446 cases that were listed as undetermined, or what they wrongfully refer to as inconclusive, it's actually the cause of death is undetermined or manner of death, was 5. So if you do the math, 5
out of
446, that's
okay.
about 1%.
Yeah.
Undetermined. And that happens with forensic pathologists in other countries. Sometimes they have to produce undetermined reports or the cause of death or manner of death that's undetermined. Why? Because you can't concoct the science, you can't create
You need the
magic
proof.
out of thin air.
So
It's not supporting evidence, especially one of the main types of cases where you get undetermined cause and manner of death, decomposed.
Yeah.
And Dr. Walker and his colleague and some of our doctors can walk you through the steps of decomposition and why it's so hard when organs are not there that you can't look at the brain or the lungs and say what happened, because they don't exist after several hours of decomposition. You can't produce results from what you don't have.
Let me ask a quick question here, and perhaps this would serve to clear up some of the concerns that the media has, particularly. When you have a post-mortem examination being conducted and you have results to share, why is not there perhaps some form of layman explanation as to what transpired that resulted in the cause of death? I ask that because when the police department shares that information with us, it's like some huge words that, the only one that I've been able to learn so far is asphyxiation.
Yeah.
Well, the challenge or the precaution is we don't want the results to be misinterpreted.
Yeah.
If we use the proper scientific terms, there's very slim chance of that being misconstrued. If we start to go into vagaries and say generic terms, or what you call the layman terms, that opens up a lot of interpretation. It can affect what the police does in terms of their investigation. But
But does the jargon work in court? I mean,
yes.
Okay.
It's very important.
It's
that-
That is
Exactly. It
probably
has
one
to
of
be.
that is probably one of the areas where you can use
Yeah.
technical jargon, because in other areas they ask you to simplify stuff, but in that area they ask you to be more specific.
And
And
that's
I
why
think public relations in general, the
Yeah.
police should be able to adequately reflect cause of death without changing the interpretation of the science. But I want to go further though, because in other jurisdictions, oftentimes, if you are providing a forensic service and that is what your capacity entails, and I want to bring in an independent person to observe, there have been challenges with that in the past. What is the problem in having other persons observe, whether it's for the family as an advocate or having them engage in the process? Because like any other field, a good doctor, when they give you a diagnosis that you're not happy with, says, go for a second opinion. To be sure, because maybe I am wrong, or maybe you need to hear it from somebody else.
Yeah, so in terms of the quality assurance process, we want to work on that. The family has the right to request a second post-mortem.
Yeah.
Whether that involves their other expert coming in and viewing the post-mortem, or ideally we hand over everything after our staff is done and say, yes, you're entitled to that. That is a part of a robust justice system where you can challenge the expert findings.
Yeah.
Right? So we're not opposed to that, but it has to be done properly. It has to be done by people that have the authority to do so, that have the proper qualifications to come in and say, and it has been done before.
Okay.
Some of the KHMH pathologists have done second post-mortems on findings that our doctors have, and they've challenged it in court, and that's, like I said, that's a part of the robust justice system that we want to have. But to go back, previous to what we were saying, to make sure that the technical jargon or terminology is understood in court is exactly why we have about 7 judges at the court, the Supreme and Court of Appeal tomorrow at the Symposium, receiving these talks. We have the prosecutors, we have I think about 10 prosecutors that will be there to ensure that not only our staff stay up to date, because it's an ever-evolving science. There's new and required annual trainings that our staff have to undergo. We want our stakeholders to develop in sync with us as well.
So going back to, you said over 400 autopsies conducted in 1 year, 5 undetermined, which is not inconclusive. You're saying they're 2 very separate things.
Yeah. It's undetermined pending further tests is usually the caveat.
Okay.
Sometimes we don't have those tests in Belize.
And that's what I was going to ask. And I can only use the most recent example with the body of Adamir Chuck, and you don't have to give me specifics. But from the public's perception, it is most important just to bring our minds at ease to understand what happened to this young woman. In a case like that, or any other case where the matter is undetermined, pending further tests, what is collected? Where does it go? And when do we get these secondary tests that can be conducted to find out more of why someone lost their life?
Yeah, so the post-mortem follows a routine procedure. They collect tissue samples, bodily fluid samples, for 2 of the main types of tests that support cause of death findings that would then determine manner of death. Toxicology and histology, aside from the gross inspection and microscopic examination. No. Toxicology tends to look at...
in English, anything.
Toxicology looks at chemicals or poisons or suspected toxins or trace or metabolites in bodily fluids or in tissues. Histology looks at the microscopic or the tissue composition. For instance, cardiac muscle. If you look at cardiac muscle under histological test, you can determine whether somebody suffered a heart attack, things like that. No, we store what we can't test right now. A lot of labs do this. What you can't test, you store. And then later on in your CSI shows, they talk about cold cases. They go and dig up some of these things. Rather than just throw it out, we store it. So storage space is one of our constraints as well, because we store a lot of the things that we can't test or that we're trying to outsource at some point. Right? In terms of the inability to say right away what caused or what produced a particular cause that led to a manner of death. Sometimes the other findings from the post-mortem, just photographs or observations, can help the police investigators who are present or who should be present at the autopsy go and better conduct their investigation. So even though we can't say the cause of it was, for instance, just some random example, asphyxiation, manner of death, homicide, there are findings, there are gross findings in the post-mortem that the doctor can explain to the police investigator to go and search or to go and investigate better. So whether or not it's undetermined, it's not dead and done undetermined. Right?
It's not that they didn't get any information
correct, leads.
to work
They didn't get leads, because actually a lot of time they do get some leads.
Okay.
And the findings from their investigation can corroborate what they observe,
Yeah.
like marks or bruises or whatnot. No, but it doesn't mean that the undetermined statement is dead and done, that there's nothing that can come out from that post-mortem. And sorry, I can't get into space.
No, I understand. That's why I said using a general situation. You know, I think you have really clarified quite a bit in terms of the work that you do and the constraints that you do have. In hosting the symposium and having all these targeted groups there, you're going to be working with people throughout the justice system, the media, and I'm guessing the public too in your symposium. What do you want people to perceive differently at the end of this process that they weren't aware of or weren't exposed to before?
Well, first of all, that we have a forensic department, that we're not police officers, that we work objectively, but in support of police. I keep saying, without police, we won't have a job. Without us, police won't be able to do their job effectively.
In court too.
Yeah, in court. And the justice system relies on the scientific evidence that we provide. No? But we're supposed to be objective. We don't try to support the case of the prosecution or the case of the defense. We should produce objective scientific evidence that can go either way in court. No? We have trained staff is another thing that we want the public to understand. We have staff, about over 40% of our staff have bachelor's degrees in science-related areas or forensic science-related areas. About 20% have master's degrees in forensic science or forensic science-related areas. Again, we have doctors that work for us, medical examiners. They don't have to be forensic pathologists to be a medical examiner. We are growing the department. Like I said, we have 60 staff now. Last year we had 54, I believe. So we're trying to grow the department. We're trying to increase the budget every year. It's a difficult job, as you very well know. There's a lot of burden on our staff in terms of burnout sometimes from processing multiple scenes, in terms of not being able to have the amount and types of staff that we ideally want to assist in scene assessment. That's an area we want to grow. So at this symposium, we'll also focus on what our areas of growth, prioritized areas of growth are over the coming years.
Let me ask a quick question. I guess we're about to wrap up, but I have the thought of what you said just now brought something to mind. So we are, in a sense, responders to crime scenes, right? Maybe I could put this question to Ashanti. As a reporter, there is a murder, I go out and I see a body with multiple stab wounds or whatever the cause of death may have been. And it is difficult on a personal level to sort of come down from that high, in a manner of speaking, at the end of the day, right? How does the scenes of crime technician deal with that? Because it may not necessarily be the proper term, but I look at that as like a gateway to post-traumatic stress disorder. When you are on the front line and having to deal with these kind of traumatic incidents, how do you guys deal with that?
Our staff goes through many kind of personal and on-the-job situations. Difficult for sometimes going on autopsy where you have a child, a baby, even their loved ones, they have to witness their autopsy. So we try to give our staff counseling services. We outsource this though, because we don't have our own counselor. So periodically through the year, we will have sessions, group sessions, to do stress management, other issues that they may have, and try sort of as a group to let them have the opportunity to talk about it, as well as their welfare. It's a 24-hour job for crime scene technicians. When they're not paid enough allowances to do their job, these are issues they come up with. They're not paid well, things like that. So we're trying to not only look after the welfare of the integrity of the scene, but their personal welfare. Because without their welfare, they won't go above and beyond.
No, it's absolutely a tough job.
So we do try our best as possible to provide those services for them.
And more, some of the conferences we go to, more and more departments are putting that focus on what they call vicarious trauma. That trauma that the staff experience, it's not directly but indirectly and persists months, years. Trying to give staff the ability to better cope with it, but also make sure we have some of the support systems in place that when they come to us, we can refer them either through the the Ministry of Public Service Employee Assistance Program, or
Yeah.
right now we're actively engaging in talks with a private counselor to see how we can do some of that stuff in-house. No?
Yeah.
But I just want to sorry, you talked about what we want the public to understand. Our job is a lot more than just murder investigations and DNA evidence, right? There's day-to-day forensic science things, some of the routine things that you tend to overlook: damage to property, burglary scenes, firearms, shootings, drugs.
The drug
Assault.
destruction.
Assault.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a forensics is a wide field. It touches almost every aspect. We don't cover every aspect, but it touches almost every aspect of what's going on in society.
We deal about 4,300, 4,500 scenes last year.
For the year.
And we get like 2,500
Yeah.
cases per year.
At the lab.
And it keeps increasing.
And I just want to mention digital forensics. Digital forensics we don't handle.
It's
The
at
police
C2.
IT unit. No, PITU. Police handles digital evidence. We don't handle that.
Okay. So I just have one final question, because, in hearing what you're saying, you at a staff of 60, 4,500 scenes that you process, 2,500 that will go to court. That's what you're saying, right?
Not all of them
Lead to
go
lab.
to court.
Will
They
lead
get
to
to the
lab.
lab, but not all
Okay.
of them go to court. Yeah.
So you clearly have a lot of work going, and because we're all pay attention to what's happening, that more and more we're focusing on the issues we're facing in prosecuting criminals and bringing people to justice. We've heard quite a bit of spiel about, enhancing police, enhancing training. What are your current requests for resources? Have you taken them to the right bodies? And what is in the pipeline for the forensic services? Because what I'm hearing from you is you're doing a lot with the personnel you have and with the resources you have available. But clearly, there's need for more.
Yeah, like any government department, we fall within the Ministry of Public Service. We have to abide by regulations in place, financial source orders, all those things. This year, we got an increase in our budget. This current fiscal year, our budget went up maybe about 15-16%.
Yeah.
Next year, we're going to again ask for another increase. We got increase in staff size this year. Next year, we're going to ask for another staff size increase.
Yeah.
We need new infrastructure facilities. We're getting that actively done
That's underway,
through support with our U.S. government partners, the INL CARSI program. We have a restructuring proposal that's being reviewed by the Ministry of Public Service to try to restructure the department, focus on specialized units, also try to raise the caliber of staff and also the quantity of staff that we have across the department. In terms of a new lab, there's that
The DNA lab?
a new lab including
Which includes DNA.
Okay.
You won't have just a DNA lab.
Yeah, no.
You'll have a forensic lab that has DNA, ballistics,
Capabilities,
toxicology, drugs,
Okay.
question documents, all those things. DNA would be one of those sections that Ms. Lyall talked about. Back in 2014, a project was started. For various reasons, there were delays along the way. It's called the Belize Integral Security Program, funded by the Central American Bank for Economic Integration, CABE. This year, it has started to move forward finally as quickly as, or more quickly than, as we would like. The timelines for advertising the tenders for designing the lab, when we mean the forensic lab and the morgue, construction, procurement of equipment. Very conservative estimate would be 3 to 4 years from now, we should be moving into a new lab. Very conservative estimate, we're factoring in things like natural disasters, hurricanes, droughts. No? But I'd say, and again, the Ministry of Economic Development is the one that is the focal point for this project.
Yeah.
Probably by 3 years or so, we should have some new infrastructure in place. That gives us time to train up our staff, as Ms. Lyall said. You can't do DNA overnight. You need staff to be competent in that area of analysis. We also have time to work on the DNA legislation.
I was going to
That would
ask
need
that.
to be in place.
Have you reached out to the Attorney General? Is there talks of being able to adjust the laws so that the added expense of taking the samples can be removed?
Well, that's not in legislation. That's just a practice by court.
By court,
That one
yeah.
can be more quickly resolved than actual passing or proposing a DNA bill, passing a DNA act.
Okay.
That
That's
DNA Act, excuse me, sorry, that DNA Act that he's speaking of would be for when we do it ourselves.
Okay.
For how you would collect samples, how you would get the samples into court. The one you're talking about is more immediate as to the practice we have now of outsourcing.
Okay.
So to get that
So it's more protocol than actual
Yes.
we're trying to
regulations.
push-
Yes.
Yeah, we're trying to push for that sooner
yeah,
rather
which
than-
is
Yeah.
why we hope to educate the stakeholders on the benefits of doing it through a courier service.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
because if we get that, then we have more ability to start sending more DNA, to outsourcing more until such time
Yeah,
that we
so-
finally get that lab constructed.
Yeah.
In the pipeline for scenes of crime are two major projects. We want to move out of the building of the police stations into an independent space. Many of the police stations are dilapidated, they have leak issues, mold issues, and we cannot do forensic procedures exposed to these things.
Yeah.
So we're working on moving all the offices countrywide to an independent space in a phase
Yeah.
with the help of the U.S. Embassy and also for the headquarters. We're currently stationed at Queen Street Police Station. We've outgrown the space, so we need a bigger headquarters. So,
I know we're
as
out
well
of-
as certification. We want to certify the crime scene technicians so that their competency is not questioned in court as their capabilities
Yeah.
on processing scenes.
Great.
Just one last bit, sponsorship. I have to big up my sponsors, or our sponsors, Caribbean Motors and Belize Natural Energy, have generously provided the airline tickets for these experts from Canada, from DC, and from St. Lucia.
To
The
come.
rest of
Yes.
it is Government of Belize and University of Belize.
Yes.
Excellent. And so your training takes place this week, but the public event is the symposium that takes place on Friday.
Yeah, well, the
Yes.
symposium
entire
consists
thing
of
is
the
a
the
Yeah.
training for stakeholders plus the
Yeah.
presentation on the 27th. no?
And on Friday, people need to register before they attend, I'd
Yes.
imagine.
Yes,
Yeah.
the email address is on the flyer.
All right. And you'll hear from your panelists on a wide range of topics.
Correct.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you
for
We
having
do
us.
appreciate it, and best of luck.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
All right. We're going to go ahead and take that final break, and when we come back, we'll have our wrap up. So stay tuned.